feeling a bit morbid actually, because I thought this is my first, so I was creative director at Comic Relief, and I did the Legacy of the World Cup, and then I've been quite quiet working on a new idea, and this is my first time I've talked about the new idea, and it sort of makes sense mostly to talk it through my life and what I've learned and what's led me to essentially launch a new currency, which HMRC recognises as a new currency, which is amazing, and a currency for good. And so I thought, when I've been sort of putting this together, I felt slightly morbid actually, thinking back on my life. And so let's see where it takes me when I tell you how I got to launch a currency for good and think it's the answer to, hopefully, to quite a lot of problems. So I went to school, and school was rubbish for me, and I was rubbish at school, and I got, in fact, I got one CSE grade 1 for art, and I got nothing else. And we didn't know about university, and I had a very distant relationship with my parents, a very arm's length relationship. I remember Noel Gallagher saying he was hit by his dad when he was young, and there was a bit of folklore about that, and he said, well, everybody's dad hit them when they were young. And it was that sort of 60s sort of childhood where there was a bit of an arm's length relationship with your parents. And as I said, we didn't know about university, but my dad went with me to the careers officer to say that I wanted to be a Formula 1 motor racing driver. So he gave me that sort of support, but no constructive support particularly. And I didn't end up being a motor racing driver. And now I have a son that wants to do the same thing. And so I went to art college for 1 year because that was the one qualification I got, and I managed to blag in because I invented some good board games. And I hated that because everyone wanted to be an artist and I couldn't draw, so it was a bit embarrassing. So I left, and then I worked for 3 years in Boots the Chemist, behind the counter, when Boots did photography and music. So it's 3 years, the 3 years when I could have been at university. And I learned more in those 3 years working behind a counter about what the public like and don't like and how to market to the public than anything else I ever did. And I only know that in hindsight. I didn't know that obviously at the time. But I tell you, you work in a shop like Boots for 3 years, you get to know what people like and don't like. And people don't give you much time or attention, and you've got to give everything back. But it's the only way that things work. So I did that, and then I resigned, gave up without telling my parents, but I still lived at home, and I wrote to every BBC radio station and said I wanted to be a DJ. And rather than writing to them and telling them I wanted to be a motor racing driver, I'd probably changed by then. And they all wrote back saying all the jobs come from London, so I had to write to London, and I ended up in the record department of the BBC on a temporary contract, which lasted 3 years. They kept renewing it for 3 years. So I was in the record library at the BBC. I got to London, which was amazing. And it was obviously great and amazing for a kid with one CSE grade 1 to get to work at the BBC. And then my sort of entrepreneurial thing started to spark up then, and I was into music and into popular culture. And so I started managing bands from Farnborough in Hampshire, which is where I'm from. And I thought it started to go all right, and so I left my job at the BBC to manage bands. And so that was when I was 23, and when I was 30, I was still managing bands and I still had no money. But I'd had the best time of my life, and my learning of that 7 years is just do whatever you want to do, because I had the best time of my life. I was on the Enterprise Allowance Scheme every week, so I got 40 quid for every week for about 7 years. I managed to come up with a new reason every year that they should put me on it for another year. And so it was great, and we recorded an album in New York. I had a band signed to Virgin, we toured with Debbie Harry, and that was the height of my success in 7 years. But it was a brilliant time and a great time, and I wouldn't do anything else, and I'm glad I didn't live an ordinary career and a ladder. And so I got to 30, and I met my wife 3 days before my 30th birthday, although she wasn't my wife when I met her, luckily, otherwise that would have been arranged. And she wasn't going to live with me, a penniless man in West London, so I thought I better start earning some money. So there was a bit of a gap in marketing music to students at that stage. This is the early 90s. And so I thought I'm going to start a company that markets records to students. And so so I waited for my Enterprise Allowance check to turn up, and then I phoned lots of universities up, and before the internet existed. And as a famous saying says, and my daughter now says to me, you had computers before the internet, what did you do with them? And so what you did with them is you logged in what you did on the phone. So we created this database on this computer, which could do nothing else except be a database on that one computer, of all the student radio stations, all the student press editors, entertainment managers and things, and started sending them music. It got paid by record companies, and that went quite well. And then, coincidentally, Margaret Thatcher then said, oh, we're going to get 1 million students in higher education by the end of the century. And I would love to claim that she said that before I started the company, but she said it after we started the company. Because then we rode a bit of a crest of a wave through from early 90s to 2000 of everybody wanting to market to students. So we started with music. We did Radiohead was the first band I did in '92. Wayne's World was the first movie, if anyone remembers Wayne's World. Woo! And brilliant film. And we did Pulp Fiction and Blair Witch Project and Monsters Inc. and Toy Story, and then we did every crisp packet, every beer, every condom, every young person's rail card, anything that students have, we were getting paid to market to them. And that database actually of all those entertainment managers included people that are now running media in London. And Ricky Gervais was on that database. He was entertainment manager at ULU. Marketing director of News International was on there. I met someone the other day who manages lots of top DJs. He said, oh, Beatwax, I was on that mailing list. He was an ents manager somewhere. And, so it worked, and my learning from that, obviously, and I would always do that now, which I've done again really, is I'd spend ages finding what is the idea, and there's no point launching another idea or another agency where these days you just compete on price. Luckily in the 90s we weren't competing on price, but now it's just competing on price. And so you've got to find your USP, and we had a really good USP, and of being that only agency marketing to students with the best database. And we rode a crest of a wave, which is far better than just competing on price every day. I actually got married in '94, and I was going to say someone else rode a bigger crest of a wave. I had a friend who came to my wedding who said, I'm leaving MCA Records on Monday, I'm starting an internet agency. And I said, what's the internet? And then I told him I thought it sounded like CB radio. And so he's now richer than me. But, he rode a bigger crest of a wave. So part of doing Beatwax, I actually then saw in a little computer mag one day, I saw a little write-up of a website called Friends Reunited. And I thought that was quite a good website, that's quite a good idea. So I went on and there was no one on it, and my school was on it 3 times, and my sister's school was on it 2 times. And so I wrote to them and said, this is a brilliant idea, it's a bit shit, this website. And so we had a meeting, and so agreed to do PR. And so it became massive, which was obviously interesting. My one thing I did, apart from run the company that did the PR, was to decide that it should be a husband and wife, sold as a husband and wife thing. It was 2 men running a business. This was an internet idea that was theirs. But I thought the British public aren't going to pay £5 to these 2 blokes, and they're real in their internet entrepreneur type way, where when's our exit strategy and all that was going on in the late 90s. So we packaged it up as a husband and wife thing, run out of the front room in Barnet, and the media loved it. And the other major learning of that, which I always, and all these things I take forward, obviously you take everything forward in your life, is that we made journalists become fans of it, rather than getting journalists to write about it. We set it up, we got lots of local PR before we went to the national, so that when a journalist went on it, he recognised, or she recognised someone on Friends Reunited from their school. And so what does a journalist want to do? They want to write about it, because they want to go to that school and say, what are you doing now working in a local shop? What are you doing now working in a local charity shop? I'm working for the Sunday Times, or for the Observer, or Radio 5, or Radio 4, or whatever. And so that's what every article in every newspaper was based on. Journalists that achieved massive success, all his classmates achieved nothing. But it meant, well, we got 2 years of non-stop PR, which was obviously phenomenal, and they went on to sell it for huge amounts of money. And so I did that, and then I sold my own agency. I actually then got onto the internet as well, and I started an agency marketing and researching films for the movie industry in the UK and here, because the movie industry researches everything. And so we started that in the early 90s, and in the late 90s, and I sold them both. And this drive, I'd had a drive, which then comes to this point in my life after when I sold these, that this distant relationship I'd had with my parents, I knew that my entrepreneurial drive came from trying to prove to my dad that I was good enough for him, that I was good enough for him to love me. And that came out of me through being an entrepreneur, and it could have come out of me sort of in different ways. And I remember, and so I phoned him up and said I'd become a millionaire, and I thought that would be the way to get his love. And he sent me a nice card saying, well done, being a millionaire, love Dad. So I got that, and I thought that's not quite good enough. So so then my dad brought me up on a bike, riding bikes. So then I sold the company. I went to a bike shop and I bought 200 quid worth of Lycra. I had a race bike and I thought, I've got to race bikes now. And so I spent 5 years racing bikes and running marathons. And I raced across South Africa and the Alps and the Rockies, and I'm meant to be doing one of them again next year. And it was brilliant. And it was, again, the same entrepreneurial drive in the way that it came out. It came out as an entrepreneur. It came out this time as proving me to my dad that I was good enough. He was a cyclist, and then I had to be a good enough cyclist. And the first day I raced, I came second, and which was unbelievable, obviously. I was 40 years old, and I came second in a race. So I found out my dad in the car on the way back saying, I've come second in this race. And he goes, oh, probably the best riders weren't out that day, or out today. So that didn't go down too well either. That was a bit of a moment when I got home with the wife. And so I still kept riding, and then I always knew there was some, obviously I sold my company at 40, they're still both going 10 years later, which is probably the biggest achievement I've had, that both agencies still exist without me, which is probably not my claims to success, but they still go.
What are they called?
One's called Beatwax, and one's called First Movies, which is the movie research agency. And so I thought, I want to go to Africa and see the other side of life and see what this is all about, what life is all about. I've got 4 kids now, I had probably 2 or 3 at the time. And so I planned to work on an orphanage and travel around Africa. And so I went out there and worked in an orphanage in Mozambique and read a book called The Continuum Concept. And that book made a lot of sense to me in that it was written by an American model in the 70s who went to South America where there wasn't much Western influence, and she saw these kids, generally really young kids, really happy, which follows on from the conversation we had before. You know, they were just laughing and joking, and there was no screaming and argument that obviously we're used to. And the conclusion of it was that these kids received total unconditional love, which is something obviously I felt I hadn't received, and lots of people feel they don't receive. And so she felt that could come out in many ways, that people in life they look to God to achieve that, they look to alcohol, they look to drugs, and they look to being an entrepreneur, and that was one of their examples. And I bought right into that idea, and I thought, that's what I've done. I've tried to find unconditional love through being an entrepreneur. That was my drive to success, was to prove my dad I was good enough and that he would love me. And so that book had a big influence on me, and I'd say it's well worth reading. And I worked in this orphanage, and then I thought, the world is fucked, and I've said it a couple of times earlier today to people, and it is, and obviously when you're there, and I've been there again as Comic Relief in Africa, it particularly is right in your face of how bad this life is, let alone the people in the UK who don't have a great life. And so I was going to say, what else was I going to say about that? It's just, I also happened to be there when South Africa got awarded the World Cup. I was in Johannesburg in a bar watching on the TV. They got awarded the World Cup, so it's about 2005. And so that was quite good. And I remember writing a thing saying, it's not for me to work on the front line in Africa. I think I can achieve more by being somewhere in marketing or something, using my skills in another way. And I wrote, I think education is the answer to so many of the problems here. So I came back, and unbelievably, a few weeks later, there's an advert in The Guardian to be creative director of Comic Relief. And I thought, well, obviously that would be a great job to have. I haven't worked for 5 years. I consider myself completely unemployable. And so I applied for the job and unbelievably got it, which was unbelievable. I think I was the only person not through one of the agencies and things, and so I got this job. And so we had a team of 50 people, and we did all the TV show and the internet and all the creative stuff. My one little idea I'd say there, out of all the things, one thing I claim is Red Nose Day 09, and Red Nose's sales had flattened from 05 and 07 were quite flat. So I said, why don't we just have 3 Red Noses instead of 1? So at least people would buy 1 or buy all 3. So suddenly we had the biggest sale of Red Noses ever. And so that was a little idea that made millions, which was great. So that was brilliant. And I was going to say part of my life then had become to work in coffee shops, working out of coffee shops on my laptop. Wi-Fi was around, and I just love living and working where real life is. And that's one of my huge things that I do, and I've written a sort of book about it in a way, is that rather than take yourself into the artificial sort of location of an office where things are so quiet, people are not talking to each other and emailing each other from a foot away, to work in a coffee shop, which is generally quite a positive atmosphere. And I think it actually got me my job at Comic Relief as well. So I said this in one of my interviews. I had to get interviewed 7 times, and one of them was from Richard Curtis. And I told him this, and he said he had the same thing. When he wrote Blackadder and not the 9 o'clock news, they used to be sat in a little office at the BBC, not knowing whether it was funny or not. And when you could hear someone coming up the stairs, you knew instantly what was funny. And it's part of this thing, going back into schooling as well. They said the best way to learn something is to explain it to someone else. And I saw that recently in Wired magazine, and I saw it on my kids' report in the same week. And explain an idea to something else. So working in a coffee shop just gives you that sense in your mind of these people around you. Almost everything we do, it has to sell itself at some point to members of the public or to each other, and those people are in a coffee shop. And you just can get this mental play off of them of, are they going to buy into this thing I'm working in front of me, rather than just working with people that are going to say yes because they're on the same team and they're all getting paid to do it. So I spend a lot of my time working in coffee shops, and it also goes along with that thing of just working when you're in the flow, rather than just working, I find it mad that every job in the world takes 40 hours a week from 9 o'clock Monday to 5 o'clock Friday, whether you're a doctor or an internet entrepreneur or a dustbin man. Every job takes the same, which is obviously ridiculous. So I have this thing of working opening hours rather than working office hours, so whenever the coffee shop's open I could be in there working away in it. But if you're not in the flow and it's not coming, then just stop and do your 40 hours. At the moment, I'm working hard and I feel I can get 11 hours, productive hours a day, which is phenomenal, but it comes at different times a day. It certainly isn't from 9 o'clock till 8 o'clock in the evening. So then did Red Nose Day, and then we started to help a campaign called One Goal, which was from the Global Campaign for Education, was about all governments said they would get every kid in the world into school by 2015. And that would take £12 billion a year. And so we used the World Cup as a leverage to talk to all those governments. And so we got every footballer signed up around the world, and this huge amount of content, every footballer going One Goal. There's a website, Join One Goal. We got 18 million supporters. We got every mobile phone company supporting it globally because we gave them content from the World Cup, which is obviously another huge learning, is you love celebrities. Celebrities change everything, and it's unfortunate, it's unauthentic, it's quite shallow, but they get the interest of the public, and obviously Comic Relief uses that massively. And during, in fact, on Comic Relief, as an example, we did the Red Nose Day where Chris Moores and a bunch of people went up Kilimanjaro, and Chris Moores did a big Twitter account, and we sent an official tweeter up to tweet the whole trip with all the celebs and Gary Barlow and everyone. And Chris Mills left his mobile at the bottom and went up. His Twitter account grew faster than the official one, even if it didn't tweet for 9 days. So that showed us how much everyone just, it's just celebrity. And the footballer celebrities managed to get all the mobile phone companies involved as well. So the Comic Relief that I sort of was involved in raised 82 million quid, and then One Goal ended up raising 400 million from governments around the world, which was fine. But then I come home, and I'm not being stupid by saying, obviously in one way it's amazing, but it's 400 million quid. So every government in the world, 400 million quid. I come home, I live in West London, I open a stand and it says, Shoppers revive Westfield Shopping Centre. So Westfield's just opened. Shoppers spent £870 million in that one shopping centre last year. Twice as much as every government in the world had come up with. And 10 times more than Comic Relief. So I thought, this is what I want to do. I want to come up with an idea that gets these people, everyone, and I work in the coffee shops in Westfield, and it's rammed. It'll be rammed this minute, like Exeter, I wandered down there, it's rammed. People are shopping all the time. We need to give these people some sort of option and some choice to do good, rather than it be this big thing that this is my real life and then doing some good is over here. So I was playing around with ideas. I'm on the social legacy board of the Olympics, so it's still playing around with ideas from there from September. And then I came up with this idea of Blue Dot. And I'm going to show a video now, actually, which is just why it's called Blue Dot. And which, if you show that now.
From this distant vantage point, the Earth might not seem of any particular interest. But for us, it's different. Consider again that dot. That's here. That's home. That's us. On it, everyone you love, everyone you know, everyone you ever heard of, every human being who ever was, lived out their lives. The aggregate of our joy and suffering. Thousands of confident religions, ideologies, and economic doctrines. Every hunter and forager, every hero and coward, every creator and destroyer of civilization. Every king and peasant, every young couple in love, every mother and father, hopeful child, inventor and explorer, every teacher of morals, every corrupt politician, every superstar, every supreme leader, every saint and sinner in the history of our species lived there, on the mote of dust, suspended in a sunbeam. The Earth is a very small stage in a vast cosmic arena. Think of the rivers of blood spilled by all those generals and emperors, so that in glory and triumph they could become the momentary masters of a fraction of a dot. Think of the endless cruelties visited by the inhabitants of one corner of this pixel on the scarcely distinguishable inhabitants of some other corner. How frequent their misunderstandings, how eager they are to kill one another, how fervent their hatreds. Our posturings, our imagined self-importance, the delusion that we have some privileged position in the universe, are challenged by this point of pale light. Our planet is a lonely speck in the great enveloping cosmic dark. In our obscurity, in all this vastness, there is no hint that help will come from elsewhere to save us from ourselves. The Earth is the only world known so far to harbor life. There is nowhere else, at least in the near future, to which our species could migrate. Visit? Yes. Settle? Not yet. Like it or not, for the moment, the Earth is where we make our stand. It has been said that astronomy is a humbling and character-building experience. There is perhaps no better demonstration of the folly of human conceits than this distant image of our tiny world. To me, it underscores our responsibility to deal more kindly with one another and to preserve and cherish the pale blue dot, the only home we've ever known.
Amazing speech and video, and people upload stuff on YouTube every day to that speech, with obviously the daily occurrences around the world. And so that was so it made a great name for Blue Dot. So the idea created a currency for good, essentially, and so it's very similar to the Comic Relief model, except it works for every charity in Britain. Essentially, if you support any charity, you can get blue dots. And so there's 9,000 charities registered with Just Giving, and so people donate through us into Just Giving and we give you dots. If you volunteer for charities, and obviously early days of working with aggregators of charities, you get blue dots. And you get dots for liking a charity or sharing them on Facebook and Twitter. You can earn a small amount of dots for doing that. Because I tell you, no one, like seeing, we've just done a Noel Gallagher promotion, and you do a normal promotion in a commercial world, And there's huge response. You add the word charity or cause to that same thing, and the response drops off. Even Comic Relief was hard work. There was something like 280 comedians and famous people involved, and it's still hard work. And we just, so we just actually managed to get the site live. I'm moaning at developers in the middle of the night, and the next day I'm at Paddington Station working in a coffee shop, and it went live, and I thought, oh brilliant, it looks like I want it to look like. And then 2 minutes later, Noel Gallagher's website went live with a promotion saying you can get tickets to my tour through Blue Dots. And so literally, I just sat there and watched hundreds of people did an action for charity, which was amazing. And now, 2 days later, it's something like 28 charities have had cash donations through Blue Dot because Noel Gallagher's fans want to get tickets for his tour, which is amazing. And 750 have done some sort of sharing action or invited friends to charities, etc. on social media. So the idea is that you can get unique products and you can get career experiences as well, so that you're actually on here can get your Blue Dot CV, which is a CV of all the good actions you've taken, which is just about to go live. It has a demo on there at the moment. So how you donated to a charity or supported someone or liked or invited friends, etc. And we've got huge amounts of businesses going to come out and say they recognise Blue Dots on a CV as a positive attribute, and you'll be able to share that CV, etc. So there's two areas to it, and then one, we want to sort of help people with their careers. You know, it's going back to the start of me. I had a dream, and I want to help people live that dream. My ultimate impact we can have on two ends is at one end is people like big major brands start spending money with Blue Dots because it makes them look good. It's a marketing exercise for them, and it helps the world. So they spend money with us in the same way that Sainsbury's spend a huge amount of money with Comic Relief. And then the other end is some kid who's in his room and a bit out of the system, who then thinks, I've got to go on a course for a year, or I've got to go down the job centre or whatever if I want to make a difference to my life. Could actually just go and like a couple of charities, or just see an opportunity to go and volunteer and do something and get some dots that go on their CV and get something back, something that they want to get as well. They could go and get a ticket or money off a download or something. And so I want to have impact at both those sort of ends. And one of the things we've discussed here is we've got an offer of people being able to shadow top execs, and you'll be able to shadow Denise Lewis, the athlete, although that'd be quite funny to try and shadow her if she's training. But more pleasantly, you can shadow directors at Facebook and Yahoo, the editor of Wired, actually, which you've all got. David Rowan is a big supporter of this, and you can be the editor of Wired with him for a day. And so we were going to ask you lot to do something, and maybe there's a shadow a like minds delegate for a day. And so if you've got an opportunity that someone can come and shadow you and see what it's like to do what you do for a day and enter that, and we're asking people that have earned their dots to say what difference to their career that would make, and that would be brilliant. So that's my sort of call out for that. But I was just going to, it's sort of as an Annie Mac offer that we've got going live, and she's been a great supporter as well from Radio 1. And so it probably doesn't go live for a couple of weeks, really. It's just that we're honing it down now so that every day there's a big offer in the zeitgeist. Ideally yesterday we would have had Stone Roses tickets. That would have meant lots of support for charity, and that's where we're aiming, that sort of thing. But any help you can do is needed. And there's a couple of facts that are on my sort of, on the website of why sort of the world's fucked still, whatever. When I was doing One Goal, we needed £12 billion a year. That's less than America spends on pet food. And less than Americans spend on pet food would educate every kid in the world, which is just mad. Less than Americans spend on ice cream every year would educate every kid in the world. And we use those figures to make an impact, and it's still hard work. And one of the figures with this is that the amount we spend on diet books would feed every starving child who dies every 3 seconds in the world. It's just mad. The world is mad. So we're just I just want to bring charity and causes up to the front a little bit. So if you can play a role at some point, then I'm sure we can organise that through the organisers. That's my bit, actually. I'm doing a lunch thing tomorrow, so if anyone wants to know how specifically you can engage people, then come and have this lunch thing and we'll have a chat about it then. Thank you.